episode of the Marriage Revival Collective. So, we are talking about marriage burnout. So, I'm sure you've all heard of this term burnout in the work setting, right? A lot of people felt this leading up to COVID, during COVID, post COVID. It first started in the healthcare industry, and now people use it in many different settings. And burnout in the work setting looks like exhausted, unenthusiastic, can barely get yourself moving in the ways that you need to. But what about marriage? How does this look in marriage? So that's what we're going to talk about today is what this looks like and how do you know if you're experiencing marital or spousal burnout. This is one of the more common dynamics I see in my practice with couples. So in marriage, what is marital burnout? So a few things to consider. When the couple realizes the marriage is not what they expected, that's really a big one. There's a sort of you've felt disillusioned all this time, thinking that your marriage was going to be one way, and now you sort of have this realization that, oh, it is not how I expected it to be. One partner is providing all the love, the care, the support, but they're actually not receiving it back. This one way dynamic is another example of what it looks like. It's also the result of the buildup of bitter conflicts, heated arguments over time. And these long-term conflicts, they actually start to chip away at the love. So that's really where it becomes problematic. And then you can also think about it as a moment in the relationship when the excitement of the romantic love fades, which opens space for feelings of resentment. And resentment in a marriage, like contempt, is a killer. So let's talk about what does it look like and feel like so you can assess whether or not this is the experience you're having in your marriage. So it is total emotional exhaustion. And with that comes your coping mechanisms are so overwhelmed. You're tired, you feel hopeless, you get a lot of frustration, maybe you're depressed, you're feeling like a failure, you're starting to feel trapped. You might even be saying, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And so these obviously could be feelings that you would experience in any number of situations. But what we're looking at is when they manifest in your relationship, about your relationship or about your partner. So we'll also see irritability, apathy, like just a lack of caring, a lack of energy. You may even prefer being alone because being with your partner is so emotionally draining. So you might avoid them. You might come home late from work, have more nights out with your friends, go to bed before your partner so that you don't have to be alone with them. Maybe you're thinking about divorce. You're walking on eggshells. You're in a bad mood a lot of the time, and ultimately your needs are not being met. So these are all signs. Of course, you don't have to have all of them. You may have some, you may have different ones, but these are all signs that you are experiencing relationship, marriage, or spousal burnout. So let's talk a little bit about what relationships are actually prone to this, because it would be very helpful for couples at the outset to be thinking about some of this before they get to that point. So if you're a couple who's not there yet, I have something for you. If you are a couple who's already at this stage of burnout, I have something for you too. So hang tight. So the relationships that are prone to burnout, those with poor communication. So what we see is when you have one partner or both, but at least one partner who is not an effective communicator or a good communicator or just prefers not to communicate, so much goes unsaid. And as a result, there's a lot that gets built up. So you are going to be more at risk for a lot of disagreements and arguments because you're not communicating. I mean, communication is the primary vehicle for couples to work through and move through any issue that you face. Other relationships that are prone is those where there is a partner that has an insecure attachment style, like an avoidant attachment style where you fear emotional closeness, or an anxious attachment style where you fear abandonment. And the reason for that is because it actually hampers your ability to grow within your relationship and also facilitate growth for your partner unless they can move their insecure attachment style into a secure attachment because they are with you and you have a more secure attachment style. But if they are not working on that and they are not aware of that, the anxious or the avoidant attachment style and way of relating to you is going to wear you down over time. Also, relationships where one or both partners do not how to regulate their emotions. It's very high emotionality and there's no regulation. So the dysregulation looks like you're easily upset or easily angered, or there's a loss of control over emotions, or you can't label feelings accurately. So that level of emotional dysregulation is really problematic in couples and contributes to a high level of burnout. So that is something to be thinking about. So these are all things that you can actually be thinking about in advance while you're in a newer, younger relationship in order to prevent these kinds of dynamics from setting in. Okay, so let's say you've already burnt out. How do you start to rekindle a marriage that's burned out? Number one, you start working on emotional regulation. And my favorite way of doing this is through a nervous system practice. And I have a toolkit. It's called the Couple's Guide to Conflict. I will actually link it below for you so that you can download it. And it is a game changer. I use this with my own family. I use this with my daughter when she was a toddler. I use this with my husband, and I have integrated into how I operate. And it is a beautiful practice. Okay, so that's one, work on emotional regulation. Two, either work together or work solo on your relationship, but start working on it. Understand how this happened. Like, how did we get here? How did we get to this low point of burnout so that we can prevent this from happening again once we pull out of it? Another, agree on how you're going to rebalance this imbalance that you're feeling. So the burnout, okay, one of you is giving, loving, supportive, and the other is not reciprocating. So how are you going to recalibrate that imbalance? And it's really important that you agree on that. There's a negotiation there. You have to agree on that. Okay, so now what if your partner's not interested in doing this with you? What if you can't talk to them about this? Then I would suggest you actually start to work on yourself to combat the personal burnout you're feeling within the marriage, and work with someone who knows couples. Work with a couples expert so that they can also guide you on influencing your marriage. I always suggest when individuals are going to therapy, if they're going to also be talking about their marriage, it's really good to have someone who knows marriage so that they can hold the marriage and the couple in mind while they're working with you on your stuff. Because the reality is you are part of a couple, right? Okay, so now let's say you and your spouse are not yet ready to go and get help, but you're both on board. You're both on board with working on this. So what can you do? Here's the approach I would suggest you take. One, start by being really honest about your needs, both of you. Sit down, carve out the space, have a conversation about what it is that you really need, what's missing, what are you longing for, what are you craving for, and start to come up with a plan about how you each are going to meet those needs. So that's number one. Number two, set aside time to nourish your relationship. Board game night, puzzles, going for walks, taking a picnic, going on a date, cooking together, eating together without screens. There's lots and lots of ways that you can nourish your relationship. I like when couples are mindful of each other's love language, because oftentimes we give love the way we like to receive it, which is not the way our partner likes to receive it. So go into the 5 Love Languages book or online and take the quiz so that you know what each other's love language is and start attending to that. So if your partner is physical touch, Start touching them. Touch them on the arm, touch them on the head, hold their hand, hug them. Quality time, that's a given. Acts of service. There's so many things that you could do that your partner would appreciate that you could just do without them asking. Number 4, conjure up fond memories of the early part of your relationship when the love was present and alive. And it's really easy to do this by pulling out pictures from when you were dating, from your wedding, from your honeymoon, as long as those were good times. What I would do is I would create a little folder in your phone and put some of your favorite photos of your favorite memories from that time, and allow the fond memories to start to marinate and bubble inside of you, because this will also combat the bitterness and the resentment and the hostility you feel. And on that note, lean into gratitude. Now, there's been a lot of research and studies and talk about the power of gratitude, and I endorse that. I wholeheartedly am in support of that. Now, in your marriage, it's really important that you nurture the gratitude. All of the things that you appreciate about your spouse, what they do, how they are, how they speak, who they are, what their style is, all of those things. So really lean into gratitude. It's a way to start to tip the scales away from bitterness and resentment and towards an appreciation for what you have. Number 6, give each other the benefit of the doubt. So trust that your partner is doing the best that they can and then their intentions are sincere. Now, I find this is really helpful when you can have a conversation about it and you agree that you're going to do this, but you must trust that your partner is doing the best that they can and that their intentions are sincere. So it's really important that you have a conversation about this and you both agree that you're going to give each other the benefit of the doubt. So when your needs are not being met, instead of feeling triggered and then lashing out or withdrawing, you can then have a conversation and say, okay, in the service of giving you the benefit of the doubt, I'm feeling really neglected right now, but I know we had this conversation, so I'm just putting it out there. And it gives your partner the opportunity to say, gosh, I didn't even realize it. I've been so stressed about this project at work and I've been so in my head. Thank you for putting it back on my radar. And then you can regroup. I will tell you, this goes a long, long way in couples. And lastly, number 7, take care of yourself. You really have to take care of yourself. Honor your limitations, honor your exhaustion, do what you need to do, nourish your soul, your mind, your body, all of those things. Don't forget to take care of yourself. You are in a marriage and you're taking care of your marriage, but also I want you to take care of yourself as well. So a couple more points I want to make. So is marital burnout common? I would say it is commonly occurring after a stressful period or kind of a lull in life. So it's not uncommon to experience some form of this, but it is crucial that you recognize it as soon as possible and start reconnecting before it goes too far. Now, it can also be a wake-up call that the couple needs to redouble their efforts in attending to their marriage. So if you see it, if you start to feel some of the symptoms that I described earlier in this talk, I would immediately have a conversation with my spouse and say, this is how I'm feeling. And I am worried that this is sort of leading us down a path that we're not going to want to go. And then you redouble your efforts on attending to your marriage. Another note to keep in mind is that the longer you're married, the more at risk you are for burnout. Couples just get complacent over time. So the longer you're married, the more attentive you have to be and the more front of mind you have to be with what your marital needs are. Couples with more kids have a higher risk of burnout. I mean, that sort of goes without saying. It can be really exhausting depending upon how old your kids are, how far apart they are, what their energy levels are, how many there are. And the reality is that the younger the kids, the more exhausting it is. We do know, research says marital satisfaction plummets after couples become parents. We know that. But with some attention to that and acknowledgement, we can get back up again to baseline. And on that note, marital satisfaction is a strong mitigator for relationship burnout. So this is how you prevent it from happening. Continue to attend to your marriage, keep the satisfaction high so that when you go through a stressful period, it is not going to linger long enough to create burnout. So the higher your marital satisfaction, the more cushion and buffer your relationship has to prevent the falling down into that dark hole and into the burnout that can be really hard to dig your way out of. And of course, if your couple is at the point where you're saying, we need to really work on this. We not only want to get out of this state of burnout, but we want to have an incredible marriage that we know is possible, then you should absolutely work with someone who is expert in couples and can take you there. And if that is something you are interested in doing with me, feel free to reach out to me, my email, a DM on Instagram or Facebook. I would be happy to chat with you. That's all for today. Have a lovely day.